Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and frankly I can't believe that it has already happened. The Caliban has achieved almost perfection in the game that we're going to see today. Today's hero is MLTNUTT, and I've been scouring the What Replays website since the Caliban was released to finally find something which truly shows the insane potential of this vehicle. Now the Caliban, it was released inside Wargaming's loot boxes, right? So you have to be able to gamble to get this vehicle. It can be very expensive to be able to get if you don't already have the tanks available in your garage that otherwise you would be able to get. But what you really need to know is that the Caliban statistics are just all over the place. It's possibly the most insane tank that Wargaming has ever released, with some of the worst statistics and some of the best statistics as well. Reviewing this vehicle was possibly the hardest tank to ever review for me, and I've reviewed hundreds and hundreds of tanks in the game over the years. Funnily enough, the win ratio of the Caliban is currently sitting at just under 50% average on the European server, so shall we say Wargaming, great job for releasing a balanced premium tank. When we say balanced, or at least not overpowered, I mean, balanced for who? The Caliban driver, definitely not the Alt Proto AMX30. Can you imagine being the Alt Proto driver? What was that? Just in December, Wargaming released a challenge where you can invest 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 hours of your life, depending on how good you are, to be able to get the tank for free, or as most people did, played the war game normally over those 10 days, and then probably got out like $20, $30 to be able to skip the final horrific stages. Yeah, I think the Alt Protos probably are regretting that choice now. Although I don't think that's a fair assessment. Because while the Caliban is good at dumping something on a ridgeline, it's definitely not very good when it's under pressure. And as we can see here, the reload of this vehicle is absolutely atrocious. It will take you about 35 seconds to reload when you're empty, and probably about 22 seconds to reload the second shell. The second round on this tank, once you fired it, just destroys all of your DPM. And even though the alpha damage of these high explosive shells is an outrageous 850 with 180 millimeters of penetration, it is completely troll to say the least. Now unfortunately, I'm going to have to be a little bit of a detective here and find out what MLTNUTT, who is our hero of the battle today, is going to be using on this tank. Personally for me, on this vehicle, I decided to use vertical stabilizers, vents, and a turbo, because otherwise it's horrendously slow, it has horrible gun handling, and the vents just make all of the statistics of the vehicle just a little bit better. I can tell from looking at the minimap that unless MLTNUTT is using a terrible crew, that he's definitely not using coated optics. And how funny is it, these HE rounds, so good when they go in, but with Wargaming's changes to high explosive this year, the very vehicle, the Concept 1B, which you would want this tank to be able to counter, only does 140 to the lower plate. It literally is just like rolling the dice when you play this tank and when you're firing any kind of HE rounds in World of Tanks, right? You're either doing 875 or you're doing like 100. And unless you're hitting lightly armored medium tanks, you're barely doing anything in between. And just look at the reload of the Caliban. MLTNUTT was pretty darn greedy to fire the second shot there. But look, he had a chance to do half the hit points of the most overpowered tank at tier 9 in the game. The best performer, the Concept 1B. How could you really hold your finger off that button, right? It's a tricky thing to do, but it's something that you will have to do when you're playing the Caliban to play it efficiently. What I love about the replay here is it's not just a Caliban loading all gold and just doing a paltry 600 damage, a paltry 600 damage, a paltry 600 damage. MLTNUTT knows how to entertain because he's only loading these RNG HE shells. And will it work? 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 Yes, it did work indeed. 902 damage dealt to the AE Phase 1. He is not doing very well anymore. And finally, MLTNUTT not dipping into the second shell is actually going to be able to get a bit of DPM out here. So, I don't know what to think about the Caliban. It is just such a ridiculous vehicle, and I knew when this thing was first released that we would be seeing some insane games. I just didn't realize that we'd be seeing the insane games within weeks of the vehicle being released. Although, this vehicle has now been played at least 100,000 if not 200,000 times on the European server alone. So I guess this is just kind of like the 1 in 100,000 kind of event, right? Where the Caliban, everything just works out perfectly for the vehicle. So already, MLTNUTT, two-shotting pretty much the lever there in that situation, is now up to 3,600 damage, or just shy of, and still has most of their hit points left. And the Caliban, bizarrely enough, while its side armor is a horrendous 35, which means that you can overmatch it with all 106 caliber guns and larger, the frontal armor itself is actually pretty good, which is why with this vehicle, what you want to do is kind of just come around the corner at a 45-degree angle and hope that they ricochet off your front. Because if you side scrape against anything with a 106mm caliber gun and larger, yeah, it's not going to go very well for your vehicle. So MLTNUTT is showing some DPM consideration here. And who needs DPM when you deal 841 damage to a higher tier and very competitive Swedish tank destroyer? So MLTNUTT, I don't like what you're doing right now. Turn your turret towards the WTF Panzer IV, otherwise possibly you might get a double clap from the vehicle. But then again, when you're getting shot at by gold from the WTF Panzer IV, is it really ever going to work out well for you? And oh, there we go, right into the back of the vehicle. That one has to hurt, which now means that MLTNUTT on 4,500 damage and 4 kills is now down to about a third of their hit points. So I'm still trying to figure out what kind of equipment that MLTNUTT is using on this vehicle. I've got a sneaking suspicion that he's using the aiming device. And did we hear intuition there? Perfect. MLTNUTT setting this vehicle up perfectly by making sure that you have the crew skills on your loaders to be able to switch the shells. When you've only got a 2-round auto reloader on this tank, then the intuition allowing you to get rid of that horrible 40-second reload can really help out. And now these armor-piercing rounds are what he needs to be able to deal with the threat of the T-95 and the E-75 on the enemy team. So in this kind of a situation, I was just thinking, yeah, it was a pretty good Caliban game, but there's no chance now, right? They've got no Tier 9 tanks against 3 Tier 9 tanks. They're down 4,000 hit points, outnumbered there by a 3-to-1 ratio, and oh dear, MLTNUTT, you're not getting out of this situation, even if you fire both shells into the tank. And honestly, I think MLTNUTT in that scenario was probably just thinking, I'm going to die anyway, why don't I just fire out 2 shells and at least I can get some damage. And then the most bizarre thing happens. The AMX-65T decides to actually not push around the corner, and what is going on right here? Well, look, let's be honest, that is the worst Tier 8 tank in the game, the AMX-65T. And I don't think it's being played by the best of players here either. MLTNUTT actually showing that the vehicle isn't that tall, at least compared to an AMX-65T, gives them the good old side hug, and probably has the most awkward 30 seconds of their life, reloading a shell with the worst DPM at Tier 8, just enough to be able to put in the 3rd shell to the AMX-65T and to take out the full hit points of their vehicle. Now in that situation, all MLT could have done, I guess, would have been to just fire one and then try to last long enough to reload with the amount of hit points they had, but after the engine panzer hit them, they didn't have any hit points to really play around with. And now they're reloading for another 30 seconds. This is just weird what is going on right now. And with the Emil losing more hit points to the artillery and the engine panzer coming around the corner, well, come, okay, just put another 600 damage in MLTNUTT and be done with it. A little bit of Christmas magic is what MLTNUTT said in the title of their What Replays upload, and they are definitely living up to it. As they decide to fire, which ruins the vehicle's DPM, but Santa brought them an ammo rack, so it actually works out pretty well, doing 1,195 damage with the armor-piercing round on this tank to the side of the Tier 8 German medium tank. And now MLTNUTT is up to 7,300 damage in less than 10 minutes. This is just turning absolutely preposterous. MLTNUTT, have you stolen everybody's luck for this year? Is this why 2021 has been so diabolical that all of it has been channeled into your one Caliban game? Well, if that's the case, mate, at least enjoy it. At least enjoy the moment. And hopefully everybody on YouTube is going to be able to enjoy the moment along with you. For all of the luck vampire that you've been, right? Okay, so now MLTNUTT is above. The T-95 has to try and do this quickly. The 10 degrees of gun depression of this vehicle and the big 152mm caliber gun means that MLTNUTT is able to overmatch the top of the T-95. Having a Caliban above you firing those armor-piercing rounds is possibly one of the last things that you want to do. And oh my word, how could... Was MLTNUTT firing high explosive rounds against the T-95 there? He must be, because he's got the HE round in the vehicle, so it definitely was an AP in that scenario. Missed out on that one, but MLTNUTT definitely did not miss the shot there. But are the high explosive rounds really the correct thing against the E-75? Well, seeing that the E-75 is on 142 hit points... The panic shot of destiny as MLTNUTT literally goes, oh crap, and fires the shell while reversing backwards with the vehicle with the worst accuracy and the worst dispersion values right into the lower plate of the E-75, although it probably didn't need to penetrate, as these HE shells will deal about that much damage to even thick armor. Now MLTNUTT up to 8 kills and 8,000 damage, and where will the RNG end? And this is why I was so excited to see the Caliban go into the game. Not because I think that it's a particularly wonderful tank to go in and for it to be fun to face it and fun to kind of play along with it, but definitely fun for when you get to see that 1 in 100 or that 1 in 1,000 or that 1 in 100,000 kind of game where everything just seems to go right for the tank. Okay, MLTNUTT, surely you can't miss this because, you know, it's just an arty, you're fine, dude. Ooh. Yeah, I think everyone just saw just how bad the shell velocity is with the Caliban. It truly is horrendous. The shell velocity at 354. It's pretty much like lobbing the shells or playing golf. But MLTNUTT is going to show some good discipline here. And just to be giving a huge amount of lead. It's almost like you're playing artillery in this scenario. And reloads fully, fires the shell, and does nothing to the side of the M40, M43. But fully aims the second shell, and that one flies true. Oh my goodness gracious. How absolutely preposterous is this? MLTNUTT says, love RNG. You know what? After this game, dude, I would probably love my RNG too. I'd probably keep playing all night with this kind of fortune. Alright, so MLTNUTT is quite right to be concerned that the Emil is just rushing into the WTF Panzer IV in this situation, who was last spotted, and unless they were outside MLTNUTT's render distance, is on full hit points. Well, now that MLTNUTT has actually made a bit of a misplay here in reloading a high explosive round, although it is the one that's going to deal the most damage to the WTF Panzer IV, he's unable to be able to get an extra shot in by, or shall I say, reload an armor-piercing round here. Alright, so the Emil has made it into position, and the WTF Panzer IV doesn't seem to be doing much. Let's leave the camera here with MLTNUTT and see what is exactly going on with the German tank destroyer. I think you can see why this is possibly one of the greatest games of the year. The WTF Panzer IV put himself on his side, and the Caliban, aka MLTG, says GG, as MLTNUTT clearly wanted to get into position to get the 10 kills, but it doesn't look like the Emil was willing to give MLTNUTT the Pools medal here, and it would have pushed MLTNUTT to about the 9.5, if not near the 10,000 damage mark, and how ridiculous. And MLTNUTT fires just some fireworks at the end of the game. Isn't that what all Americans do, as this one did come from the NA server, like firing guns up in the air, right? You couldn't script this replay. This is why I was so happy that the Caliban went in the game, because I just knew that it was going to produce Christmas magic, or shall I say YouTube magic, with all kinds of stupid. And it seems like it's infectious, even with the WT rolling himself at the end of this battle. And so MLTNUTT smashes 2,459 base experience, which unsurprisingly is enough to get an ace tanker. You could have probably got a third less than that and still got one. And what I love about this game is it's not just the best Caliban game, it's the best Caliban game by about 25% base. Add to that a casual 8,500 damage, giving MLTNUTT the high caliber and a Radley Walters medal for the 9 kills here. And this is undoubtedly the Caliban game of the year, and it might stay like that for 2022. We'll have to see. Although while MLTNUTT probably hopes so, I definitely don't hope so. I want some more of this. And really, when we think about it, the jokes about having a double-barreled KV-2 have kind of become a reality. Just a reality in the form of the Caliban. So, MLTNUTT, congratulations to you on one of the games of the year, and it had to happen in this. You definitely got lucky, but you also made calm and considerated plays, which I can tell you, with this vehicle, it is insanely hard to try and keep cool. And thank you so much for uploading this on the What Replays website. I totally agree with your title. A lot of luck and some beautiful Christmas magic. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for today. Really hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And now that we've had the Caliban in the game for a few weeks, what do you think about it? Do you think it's a completely horrible, toxic tank, or do you think that it's kind of just a little bit of extreme fun? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.